One of the best moments of a good story is a well-executed rivalry. For me, it is one of the biggest reasons why I became hooked on the show. Game of Thrones had many rivalries dating back to the constant clashing between Ned and Jaime Lannister back in early Season 1.
I'm going to open your lord from balls to brains and see what Starks are made of.
When considering my top 5, my criteria revolves around the screen time, level of hatred towards each other, and the end result. Some honorable mentions include Cersei Lannister versus Ellaria Sand, the family feud within the Greyjoy house, Cersei Lannister versus the High Sparrow, and Robert Baratheon versus Rhaegar Targaryen, which is the backbone of the storyline and would certainly be number 1 in a Robert's Rebellion spin-off show. So let's get started on my top 5 lists for the biggest rivalries during the entire run of Game of Thrones. And number 1 may surprise you. Number 5 on this list is Robb Stark versus Tywin and the Lannisters. Trouble between the Starks and Lannisters had been brewing from the very first episode of the show. You could just about feel that a war between these two houses was on the way. From the Starks suspecting the Lannisters had something to do with Bran's fall, to Jaime dueling Ned in the streets of King's Landing, you could sense that something was about to give. Lock up and wrongfully execute the Lord of Winterfell in the southern capital, and you got yourself one hell of a rivalry to kick off the show. Robb's heartbreaking response to his father's death gives you a great feel on his mentality for the near future.
I'll kill them all. Every one of them.
The young wolf marched south, winning battle after battle, and Tywin really started to take notice. The Lannisters truly underestimated Robb, and they constantly paid the price.
We've underestimated the Stark boy for too long. He has a good mind for warfare. His men worship him. As long as he keeps winning battles, they'll keep believing he is king in the north. You've been waiting for him to fail. He is not going to fail. Not without our help.
If it weren't for Robb's mistake to go back on his agreement with the Freys, Robb would have had a very serious shot at defeating the Lannisters. Tywin was so desperate to end the war that he resorted to killing the Stark forces at a wedding. Tywin knew that he had to rely on deception to finish off the threat of the Starks. It was a bitter end for the watchers of the show, and still one of the hardest scenes to watch. With number 4, we have Jon and Sansa versus Ramsay Bolton. With Jon busy running things in Castle Black, he didn't personally meet the newly legitimized Ramsay until much later than Sansa did. But Sansa definitely took the brunt of Ramsay's twisted behavior. Sansa began the show with a desire to become the queen. At this point in the show, being Lady of Winterfell and marrying the seemingly charming Ramsay sounded like a pretty good consolation. From the moment she left the wedding ceremony with her new husband, she fell into an absolute nightmare filled with abuse and evil. If it weren't for Theon growing some balls, pardon the pun, Sansa very well may have died in the home she grew up in and felt safe in. And that's just the beginning of this very heated rivalry. Sansa fled to Castle Black, where she knew Jon would protect her. It is here that Ramsay sends a threatening message to Jon stating that he must return Sansa to him. Jon and Sansa start preparing to face Ramsay head-on and eliminate the Bolton's grip on the heart of the North. Before the bloodshed, they meet with Ramsay one last time to try and offer a duel rather than having an all-out battle, which Jon certainly would have won. Also, was I the only one that was getting really annoyed at Ramsay calling Jon a bastard?
To the traitor and bastard Jon Snow.
Bastard.
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 This guy was the most infamous bastard in the North about 5 minutes ago, and technically still was at this point, if it weren't for his father sealing his own fate by legitimizing Ramsay. The Battle of the Bastards commences, and it was the best episode of Game of Thrones. Jon and Sansa get their revenge, and it is one of the most satisfying ends to any conflict as the screen turns black. The only thing holding this rivalry back from being higher on the list is a major lack of screen time compared to the others. We only see Jon and Sansa with Ramsay a handful of times, and it only spanned about a season and a half. Regardless, this conclusion is about as good as it gets. With number 3, we have Cersei versus Tyrion. Now we're getting into the very long-lasting rivalries. Cersei had been cruel to Tyrion from the time he was born, since their mother died in childbirth and she blamed him for it. That's an entire childhood of Tyrion being mistreated by his family, and Cersei was one of the biggest culprits. It's hard to imagine the things she must have done to him before us viewers got a first glimpse of the family drama as Tyrion arrived as a temporary hand of the king.
What are you doing here? This is the small council.
Yes, well, I do believe the hand of the king is welcome at all small council meetings.
Out! All of you out!
To us viewers, this friction between the two characters just seemed like a potent sibling rivalry. By the time Cersei demanded Tyrion's arrest and execution when he clearly didn't kill Joffrey, it becomes next-level hatred.
Take him! Take him! Take him! Take him!
When Tyrion fled Westeros, Cersei unleashed a manhunt across the known world. Dwarves across the land were wrongfully killed due to Cersei's rewards set in place for Tyrion's head. Tyrion literally had to hide himself in a tiny crate and stay hidden in a carriage for months just to escape his sister's wrath. Then, Tyrion pledged himself to Daenerys Targaryen, who is easily the biggest threat to the remaining Lannisters in Westeros. Cersei takes the throne in the Season 6 finale, and we are on course for the final act of this bitter feud. Tyrion nearly gets himself killed by the Mountain as he helps broker a deal for Cersei to assist with a battle against the dead, which she betrays. Tyrion nearly gets himself killed again by approaching Cersei at the gates of King's Landing in an attempt to get her to peacefully surrender the throne. Cersei then seals her fate by beheading Missandei. This will be the last time that Tyrion sees his only sister alive. For me, the high point in this feud was the second and third seasons. The close proximity to each other and constant bickering was so entertaining, and Tyrion's mind game to find out who was spying for Cersei back in Season 2 was just brilliant.
I told no one that I was offering her to the Dornish. No one but you.
Eunuch has spies everywhere.
Cut off his manhood and feed it to the goats.
No.
So many memorable times between these two characters and never a dull moment. It was peak Game of Thrones drama.
A day will come when you think you're safe and happy, and your joy will turn to ashes in your mouth.
Number 2 on the list is the Hound versus the Mountain. If this list was solely based on hype, this rivalry would most definitely take the top spot. Back in Season 1, we heard the infamous story of how Sandor got the burn scars on his head thanks to his big brother. This painful and traumatic experience created an absolutely seething hatred for his brother that resulted in a lifetime of plotting for revenge. We see the first big blow-up early in Season 1 when the Mountain tried to kill Loras Tyrell. From then on, the stage was set for the Clegane Ball. Sandor didn't see his brother for many years, but during his travels with Arya, he admits that hate is what keeps him going.
But the worst thing was that it was my brother who did it.
He is more than ready to settle the score. In Season 7, we see them face to face for the first time since that Season 1 battle, and the Hound issues a warning to his brother.
It's not how it ends for you, brother. You know who's coming for you.
Things finally come to a head in Season 8 when Sandor specifically seeks out his brother, not giving a damn about the castle imploding around him. The final duel between these two brothers was very, very good. It is probably the best thing to come out of the last 3 episodes of the show, and had a very satisfying ending. His quest for revenge was the cause of his death, but I can almost guarantee that Sandor felt at least a little bit of fulfillment as he plunged into the flames below. Rhaegar may have burned his face, but Sandor returned the favor by returning his brother to ashes. Coming in at number 1 is Jon Snow versus Sir Alliser Thorn. Not only is this my top rivalry, but it is also the most underrated. In the several years since its conclusion, I don't think I've heard anyone talk about it. So let me take you all the way back to the beginning. Way back when Jon was a new recruit at the Wall and hadn't even said his vows yet. Master-at-Arms Alliser Thorn was sent to the Wall 17 years ago. A hardcore Targaryen loyalist who was given the choice between death and joining the Night's Watch by Tywin Lannister. You know that Thorn had major resentment for House Stark, which puts a target right on the back of Ned's supposed bastard as he first enters Castle Black. Thorn was cruel from the get-go, and although Jon was easily the most dominant of the new recruits, Thorn constantly bashed him and tried to make him doubt himself.
Go clean the armory. That's all you're good for.
It is here that Jon is dubbed Lord Snow. The first season is filled with Thorn bullying Jon around and directly taunting him about Ned's death. When Jon returns to the Wall after his spying mission against the wildlings, Thorn most definitely would have made sure that Jon would be executed if it weren't for Maester Aemon vouching for him.
If we beheaded every ranger who lay with a girl, the Wall would be manned by headless men.
There's a difference between sneaking off to the Molestown brothel and sleeping with the enemy.
Jon spends the next couple of seasons at odds with Thorn while proving himself to his brothers. A brave warrior who truly puts the Night's Watch on top of his priorities, Jon was rewarded by overthrowing Thorn as Lord Commander of Castle Black in the next election. Jon could have easily made life a living hell for Thorn. He could have turned the tables on him and treated him the same way Thorn treated him in the past. Instead, Jon showed grace towards Thorn. He names Thorn First Ranger and still includes him in the operations of Castle Black. An honorable response on the turning of the tides.
I name you First Ranger.
However, Jon would be repaid in the most dishonorable fashion. Knowing that Jon still held out hope for his uncle Benjen Stark to return, Thorn helps place a cruel trap to get Jon cornered and vulnerable. Jon is confronted by the traitor sign and is stabbed many times by the mutineers. Thorn naturally lands the first blow, which I'm sure was by design.
Who killed him?
I did.
Jon's body is left alone in the cold to bleed out and freeze. Thorn retakes the mantle at Castle Black and begins executing his own plans to re-establish his vision of how Castle Black should run, nearly killing Jon's friends before the wildlings arrive to arrest the mutineers. Jon's resurrection yields the most satisfying end to any rivalry in the show. Now let me tell you, I hate spoilers. I actively avoid going on social media whenever a show or movie I'm looking forward to is about to release because I hate spoilers so much. But when Jon was resurrected, I had to know if he confronted Thorn about what he did. So I asked a coworker who was ahead of me, just yes or no, does Jon confront Thorn? The head nod response had me 10 times more excited to watch the next episode. Luckily, I discovered the show after season 6, so I was able to watch the next episode that night. And there are very few moments in the show that left me feeling so happy with how a storyline ended. What really sealed the deal for me on this is the look on Jon's face when he went to cut the rope to hang Thorn and the mutineers. Remember when Jon was highly uncomfortable executing Janos Slynt and you could see the hesitation in his eyes? Not this time. Jon was ready for this one. He was angry at what they did. He truly thought he did the right thing, and he was killed for it. This was the real meaning of justice being served, and Alliser Thorn was behind all of it. The rivalry between Jon Snow and Sir Alliser Thorn was incredibly brutal and bitter. So many moments that made you feel disgusted with Thorn's behavior. The rivalry had it all. Powerful hatred, loads of screen time, and that sweet, sweet ending. Which of these rankings do you agree with the most? Who do you think is the top rivalry of the show? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.